Hello and welcome back to Bible Basics. Today I'm really excited because we're talking about two important topics: how Jesus is our sign and how we shouldn't be led astray by false teachings, and making sure that we have our own relationship with God. So welcome back to Bible Basics. If it's your first time here, I want to start Bible Basics as a resource for new believers. While I think the church is great, I want to be able to create a safe space for new believers to learn more about the Bible, to get different commentary, and to get some background on the Bible as well. So today we're reading Matthew 16:12. A little background on Matthew. He is the author. He is one of the 12 disciples. He has a first-hand account of Jesus. His intended audience was a Jewish audience to convince him that Jesus was the Messiah. In this chapter, Jesus is gaining popularity, but he's gaining enemies just as quickly. So before I start, I do want to frame you a question. Have you ever had someone ask you a question to try to trap you? For example, it might be a coworker who you don't necessarily get along with, and after meeting with your manager, they ask you, hey, how'd that go? Just to try to get dirt on you? This is exactly the situation that Jesus found himself in. The Pharisees, they were religious leaders of the time, and Jesus and them did not get along at all. The reason being is that they had a very strict interpretation of the law, and they led people astray. They led people to believe that the law was going to save you and not God himself. And so they worshiped the law more than they worshiped God. They came to Jesus with very ill intentions. So let's read. The demand for a sign. The Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, "When evening comes, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given to it except the sign of Jonah." Jesus then left them and went away. Jesus is telling them, you guys know how to interpret the signs. You guys know how to look at clouds, but the ultimate sign is right in front of you. The law that they claim to love, Jesus was the accumulation of that law. Jesus was fulfilling that law. All the prophecies that they had heard, Jesus was right in front of them. And Jesus is saying, a sign is right in front of you, you can't even recognize. And he says the sign of Jonah. What does that mean? So in the book of Jonah, there's this prophet named Jonah, and he goes against God's wishes. He gets thrown overboard. A big fish swallows him. He's dead for 3 days and 3 nights. What Jesus is saying is that he's going to beat death, and then he's going to resurrect again. All right, then we're going to move over to the next section. And before I read this next section, I want to ask you a question. Where do you get your teachings from? Is it church? Is it a preacher? Is it a teacher? Is it a Bible video like one of these? The reason I ask is because I want to make sure that each one of us gets our teachings from the source. Let's read the next verse. Matthew 5. The yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. When they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. "Be careful," Jesus said to them. "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." They discussed this among themselves and said, "Is it because we didn't bring any bread?" Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked, "You of little faith, why are you talking amongst yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking about bread? Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teachings of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Jesus knew, just like back then, just like now, that there's going to be a lot of false teachings and that people are going to fall victim to those false teachings. The thing about yeast is that it has the power to make bread rise, to make the dough rise, to give the dough the ability to grow to its full potential. But the thing is, if you allow a little bit of yeast to come into your life, you're going to grow in the wrong areas. You're going to be growing with the wrong theology, the wrong study of Jesus. You're going to grow with the wrong idea of who God is, because you're going to follow these leaders and it's going to sound good, but then it's going to lead you down a wrong path. So while I appreciate everyone watching these videos, and I hope you get something out of it, and I hope that you come away with something, I think it's very important that for every single person that we have our own relationship with God, because only God can provide us that true relationship. No one can lead us astray if we're connected to God himself. Yeah, church is great. Yeah, I love getting more knowledge, but I think it's very important that we're not just fed from church, but we feed ourselves spiritually from what God offers us. We shouldn't base our faith on leaders, because when they ultimately fail, so will our faith. But if we base our faith on Jesus, he will never fail. Jesus talks about building your foundation on solid rock, which is him, which is the word, which is your time with God, which is your relationship with God. If you build it on preachers, teachers, churches, Bible videos, it will ultimately fail. When the storm comes, it's going to wash all that away. But when the storm comes against rock, it's solid and it has foundation where it won't go away easily. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you take something away from this. Again, I implore you for every single person to read their own Bible, have their own relationship with God. That's super important. Next week, we'll continue reading Matthew 16, chapter 13, taking it from there. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, comment down below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.